They say money talks, but in my experience, it screams. And when $2 billion goes missing, the silence that follows is deafening. I'm writing this from a place where the walls are gray concrete, not the glass and steel of the corporate world I used to inhabit. I don't mind the cell. It's honest. It's a lot more honest than the office where I destroyed a titan. Before we continue, if you love our stories, do well to encourage us by hitting the like button, share and subscribe for more. My name is Parker Greenwood. I'm 42 years old, a lover of old sci-fi novels, and formerly a senior legacy systems analyst. That sounds important, right? It wasn't. To the people at Zephyr Holdings, I was just office furniture. I was the guy you walked past to get to the coffee machine. I was the guy fixing the printer jam while executives discussed their summer homes in the Hamptons. My desk was in the darkest corner of the server floor, surrounded by humming towers of data storage. I liked it there. It was quiet, but the silence made you observant. I watched everything. Specifically, I watched Edmond Chase. Edmond was our CEO. He was young, handsome in a shark-like way, and absolutely obsessed with his own reflection. He walked through the office like a king touring his peasantry. 3 times a day, he would stride past my cubicle. Not once, in 7 years, did he ever make eye contact. To him, I was just a pixel in the background of his glorious life. He didn't know my name. He didn't know I existed. And that was his first mistake. Because if you treat a man like a ghost long enough, he learns how to walk through walls. It started on a Tuesday night. I was working late, running a routine diagnostic on the old system. Zephyr Holdings was a modern company, obsessed with the cloud and blockchain, and whatever buzzword Edmond had heard on a podcast that morning. But beneath the shiny app interface, the company's financial bones were ancient. We were running on a mainframe from the late 90s. It was dusty, clunky code, but it held the weight of the entire empire. It was boring work until I saw the red line. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't a hack. It was a logical paradox in the payment gateway. I called it the Ghost Protocol. Here is the simple version. I realized that if I initiated a wire transfer to an external vendor, but canceled the expense recording command within a 3-second window, the old system got confused. It sent the cash out of the bank to pay the bill, but it deleted the record that we had ever spent it. It was a math impossibility. The cash left the vault, but the internal ledger showed expenses, $0. The bank account dropped, but our internal profit reports remained artificially high because the system refused to acknowledge the cost. It was a black hole. I could drain the company dry, and the accounting software would still report that we were rich. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sat back in my cheap ergonomic chair. I had just found the back door to the vault, and the lock was broken. Theory is one thing, reality is another. I needed to know if I was crazy, or if I had actually found the holy grail of accounting errors. I needed a test. I couldn't risk millions, not yet. I needed a transaction so boring, so routine, that even if I messed up, it would look like a clerical error. I decided on a vendor invoice. I found a pending payment in the queue, $50 to a supplier for office consumables, printer paper. I opened the command line and intercepted the packet. I didn't change the amount. I changed the destination. I swapped the vendor's account details with the virtual account number of my personal PayPal. Then I initiated the sequence. Send funds. Delete expense log. Sync. I pressed enter. The screen flickered. The command line scrolled text faster than I could read. Then it stopped. Transaction complete. I checked the internal ledger. It showed nothing. No expense recorded. But then I checked my phone. A notification from PayPal popped up. You have received $50. The system believed it hadn't spent a dime, but the money was in my pocket. I had just intercepted a corporate artery. It worked. And nobody, absolutely nobody, had noticed a thing. A week later, I was called into a budget meeting. Not to speak, of course, but to run the projector. The IT director, a nervous man named Peter, was trying to explain to Edmond why we needed $10 million to upgrade the old system. It's unstable, sir, Peter said, wiping sweat from his forehead. The code is spaghetti. If we don't migrate to a new secure server soon, we're going to have major reconciliation issues. I stood in the back, holding the remote, holding my breath. If they fixed the system, my loophole would close. Edmond Chase didn't even look up from his phone. He was scrolling through social media, probably checking likes on his latest selfie. 10 million. Edmond laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. For what? Plumbing? Nobody sees the plumbing, Peter. Our investors care about growth. They care about the new AI initiative. But sir, the risk, Peter tried. Edmond slammed his hand on the glass table, almost shattering it. Enough. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The system works fine. You're just trying to pad your department's budget. Request denied. We spend the money on marketing. We need to look good, Peter. That's what matters. I looked at Edmond's face. He was so arrogant, so sure of himself. He thought he was cutting fat, but he was actually cutting his own throat. He was refusing to fix the very lock I had just learned to pick. At that moment, I realized something. Edmond wasn't just a bad boss, he was my partner. His ego was the only security clearance I needed. The $50 was a test. Now I needed to know if this could change my life. I went home that night and stared at my ceiling. I wasn't a criminal. I had never even gotten a speeding ticket. But then I thought about the way Edmond looked through me. I thought about the 7 years of missed promotions, the frozen dinners, the crushing weight of being invisible. I went into work early the next morning. The office was empty, bathed in the blue light of standby monitors. I sat at my desk and pulled up the command line. I didn't type $50. I typed 50,000. My fingers trembled over the keys. This was grand larceny. This was prison time. But then I remembered Edmond's voice. Nobody sees the plumbing. I executed the command. For the next week, I couldn't breathe. Every time a phone rang, I jumped. I expected security to burst in, cuffs ready. But the days turned into a week, and the silence continued. Then, at the end of the month, a notification popped up on everyone's screen. It was an email from Edmond Chase. Subject, Quarterly Crush. Team, the email read, great news. Our efficiency metrics are off the charts. Expenses are down, and profits are higher than projected. Lunch is on me today. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Because I had deleted the expense record, Edmond thought he had saved $50,000 in operating costs. He was celebrating his own robbery. I looked around the office. People were cheering for the free pizza. I smiled for the first time in years. I wasn't just a ghost anymore. I was a poltergeist. And I was just getting started. You might think that stealing $50,000 would make me run to the nearest dealership to buy a red Ferrari. But criminals who get caught are the ones who buy Ferraris. I was playing a longer game. I needed a place to hide the money, a place where the old system couldn't see it. I spent my nights setting up a maze. I created a web of shell companies with boring names like Blue Horizon Logistics and Apex Data Solutions. These companies didn't exist. They were just digital mailboxes sitting on servers in the Cayman Islands and Singapore. When I moved the money, it didn't go into my pocket. It went into the belly of this beast I had built. My life on the outside didn't change at all. I still drove my 10-year-old sedan with the dented bumper. I still brought a ham sandwich to work every day in a brown paper bag. But privately, things were different. I paid off my mother's crushing medical debt anonymously. The hospital just told her a charitable donor had covered it. I watched her cry tears of joy over the phone, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a criminal. I felt like Robin Hood. I also upgraded my home setup. I bought military-grade servers and encryption software. I wasn't just stealing money anymore. I was building a fortress. I was disciplined. I was quiet. And I was completely invisible. The 50,000 was just the appetizer. I wanted the main course. But I hit a wall. The old system had a safety feature. Any transaction over $1 million required an executive override. Specifically, it required a physical security key, a small, encrypted USB stick that generated a unique code every 60 seconds. Only the CEO had one. Stealing the key was impossible, he'd notice. But I didn't need the key. I needed the bridge. I started tracking his habits. Every day at 12:30 p.m., Edmond went to the executive dining room. He always locked his office, but he left his laptop docking station on his desk. One Tuesday, when his assistant was in the restroom, I walked into his office. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. I had 30 seconds. I reached behind his monitor and found the USB cable connecting his keyboard to the dock. I unplugged it and inserted a USB data sniffer, a tiny device, smaller than a dime, that sits between the cable and the computer. It was invisible unless you looked for it. I walked out just as the assistant returned. She didn't even look at me. I was just the IT guy fixing a wire. The next time Edmond plugged in his key and typed his PIN, my little device would copy the digital certificate and the handshake protocol. I didn't need to steal his key. I had just cloned his digital fingerprint. 2 years is a long time to hold your breath. That's what it felt like. Day after day, I used the intercepted credentials to approve transfers. 5 million here, 10 million there. It became a routine, like brushing my teeth. The numbers on the screen stopped feeling like real money. They were just a high score in a video game that only I was playing. By the winter of the second year, the total siphoned amount hit $1 billion. The company was rotting from the inside out. Cash flow was a disaster because the bank accounts were draining, but the internal reports still showed zero expenses. I had also set up a script to divert all low balance alerts from the bank directly to a hidden trash folder, so the CFO never saw the red flags. The stock price was soaring based on fake profit margins. It was a bubble made of iron. Edmond Chase was on the cover of Forbes magazine. The headline read, "The Efficiency King, How Chase Maximized Profits in a Downturn." I stared at that magazine in the break room. He was smiling that shark-like smile. He was being hailed as a genius for money that didn't exist. I was exhausted. My eyes had permanent dark circles, and I jumped at every shadow. But I couldn't stop. It was an addiction. Every time Edmond gave a speech about his brilliance, I felt a twisted need to steal another 10 million, just to prove he was a fraud. The perfect crime has one enemy, the new guy who actually does their job. Her name was Mira. She was a junior auditor, fresh out of college, bright-eyed and eager to impress. She didn't know the unwritten rule of Zephyr Holdings, don't look too close. She came to my desk one afternoon with a printout. "Parker, can you help me? I'm seeing a massive discrepancy in the cash flow. The bank statements show billions leaving for vendor payments, but our internal ledger shows zero expenses recorded. It's like we're spending money that the system thinks we still have." My stomach dropped to the floor. She had found the ghost protocol. I had to think fast. I laughed, a dry, nervous sound. "Oh, that's just a latency issue with the bank API. It's a display bug. The data is fine, it just renders slowly." "Are you sure?" she asked, frowning. "It adds up to a huge variance over time." "Positive," I lied, typing furiously. "Look, I'll apply a patch right now to suppress the error notifications so it doesn't bother you." I wrote a quick script to hide the bank data specifically from her login ID. "Thanks, Parker," she said, smiling. "You're a lifesaver." She walked away happy. I sat there feeling like garbage. She was a good person doing honest work, and I was gaslighting her to protect a thief. I was protecting Edmond. 3 days later, the guilt turned into rage. Edmond Chase called an all-hands meeting in the main atrium. He stood on a raised platform, microphone in hand, looking angry. "We need to trim the fat," Edmond announced. "I need people who see the big picture, not people who get bogged down in irrelevant details." He pointed to the front row. Mira was standing there, looking confused. Edmond motioned for security. "This auditor," he boomed, his voice echoing, "wasted 3 days chasing a display bug instead of working on the quarterly forecast. Incompetence will not be tolerated. Pack your things." He fired her. Publicly. In front of 300 people. Mira burst into tears and ran out of the room. The room went silent. Edmond just adjusted his tie and went back to talking about stock options. I stood in the back, my fists clenched so hard my fingernails dug into my palms. He hadn't just fired her, he had humiliated her to cover up his own lack of knowledge. He destroyed her career because she was the only one smart enough to notice something was wrong. That was the moment the switch flipped. Before, I was stealing for security, maybe a little bit for the thrill. But as I watched Mira run out the door, I decided I didn't just want the money. I wanted his head on a platter. I wasn't going to stop at $1 billion. I was going to take it all. I was going to break the system, and I was going to make sure the collapse landed right on top of Edmond Chase. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on Edmond Chase and executed the most dangerous phase of my plan, I have to ask, if you have come with us this far, it means you are really invested in Parker's journey. Please do well to like this video, share it with a friend who loves a good thriller, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a part. Also, tell us in the comments where you are listening from. We love seeing our global community. Thank you. After the meeting where Mira was fired, I went back to my desk with a cold resolve. I wasn't just hiding anymore, I was hunting. Up until that point, I had been trying to make the theft look like system errors or latency issues. But to take Edmond down, I needed a paper trail. I needed a trail that glowed in the dark and pointed straight at the CEO's office. I changed my tactics completely. I stopped routing the money through anonymous backdoors. Instead, I used the digital emulator I had built from the intercepted data. My computer tricked the server into thinking Edmond's physical encryption token was plugged into my port. I spent hours backdating logs. I created fake email chains within the server archives that appeared to be from Edmond to the finance department. I wrote the emails in his voice, arrogant, demanding, and full of spelling errors. I made it look like he was frantically authorizing payments to my shell companies for strategic consulting. I wasn't just stealing the company's money. I was stealing Edmond's identity. I was painting a portrait of a captain looting his own ship before it sank. The numbers on the screen became frightening. We crossed the $2 billion mark on a rainy Thursday. The sheer volume of fake data wasn't just a number anymore. It was a burden. The old system was struggling to make sense of the math. The servers began to stutter. It wasn't that the data was too big. It was that the logic was broken. The mainframe was caught in an infinite reconciliation loop. It would try to balance the books, fail because the money was missing, and then immediately try again. It was doing this thousands of times per second. The network began to lag dangerously. Emails were slow to send. Spreadsheets took minutes to open. The employees complained about the slow internet, blaming the provider. But I knew the truth. The CPU was running at 100% capacity, burning itself out trying to hide my lie. The cracks in the hull were starting to show. The panic finally set in on a Monday morning. Beatrice, the CFO, stormed into Edmond's office. The glass walls of his office weren't soundproof enough to hide the shouting. "We have liquidity issues, Edmond," she yelled. "The system says we have $3 billion in reserves, but the wire transfer to our supplier just bounced. The bank says insufficient funds." I sat at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, listening. Edmond's voice was high and defensive. "That's impossible. The dashboard shows record growth. It's the bank's fault. They're incompetent. Call them and demand they fix it." "I did call them." Beatrice shouted back. "The money isn't there, Edmond. We are bleeding out. I'm initiating a forensic audit immediately. We need to see where the cash is going." Edmond slammed his hand on the desk. "Fine. Do it. You'll find nothing but bank errors. I'm not going to let some clerical screw-up ruin my stock price." He was so convinced of his own success that he invited the executioner into the room. He thought the audit would exonerate him. He didn't realize that every digital footprint the auditors would find had been carefully placed by me, using his own digital shoes. That night, I went home and packed a bag. This was it. The auditors would arrive in the morning. They would dig through the old system, and once they bypassed the surface-level glitches, they would see the whole. $2.3 billion was missing. I threw my passport, a stack of cash, and a burner phone into a duffel bag. I had a ticket booked for a flight to a country with no extradition treaty with the U.S. It was a nice place, warm beaches, cheap drinks. I could disappear there. I could live like a king for the rest of my life. I stood in my living room, staring at the ticket. I was shaking. It was the smart play. Run. Survive. Let the company burn. But then I imagined the news reports. Edmond would hire the best lawyers in the world. He would spin the story. He would blame the rogue IT employee who vanished. He would play the victim. He might even avoid jail time while I spent the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. If I ran, I would be rich, but Edmond Chase would win. He would survive. And I couldn't live with that. I stood there for 10 minutes, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me. Then I walked to the kitchen sink. I took the plane ticket, lit the corner with a match, and watched it burn until it was nothing but ash in the drain. I wasn't going anywhere. I sat down at my computer and logged into the company network remotely. I didn't try to hide the theft anymore. Instead, I wrote a script, a kill switch. It was a simple command that would force the old system to attempt a full, hard reconciliation of every transaction from the last 10 years all at once. The old mainframe wouldn't be able to handle it. It would crash. And when it rebooted, it would strip away every patch, every mask, and every fake number I had created. It would display the raw, naked truth on every screen in the building. I set the timer for 9 a.m. the next morning, right when the shareholder meeting was scheduled to begin. I wasn't running. I was digging in. I was going to be there to watch the look on Edmond's face when his world ended. We called it Black Tuesday. The shareholder meeting began promptly at 9 o'clock. Edmond was on stage, pointing at a massive projection screen behind him. He wasn't using a PowerPoint. He was using his favorite toy, the live solvency dashboard. "This is real-time data," Edmond boasted to the investors. "Our transparency is our strength. Look at these growth metrics." I was sitting at my desk, watching the live feed. The clock ticked over to 9:01 a.m. My script executed. It didn't shut down the system. It hijacked the feed feeding Edmond's dashboard. It forced the dashboard to pull data directly from the raw, unpatched ledger I had just exposed. In the boardroom, the giant screen flickered. Edmond paused. "Just a minor technical glitch," he joked. But the screen went black, then flashed bright red. A single number appeared on the screen, 10 feet tall, -$2,300,000,000. The room gasped. It sounded like the air had been sucked out of the building. Edmond turned around, his jaw dropping. Beneath the deficit, a list of transfers began to scroll, thousands of them. The profit was a lie. The stock price, displayed on the ticker in the corner, began to plummet in real time. It was total chaos. Men in suits were shouting, and Edmond Chase stood frozen center stage, looking small, terrified, and completely exposed. Edmond didn't freeze for long. Self-preservation is a powerful instinct. He stormed out of the boardroom, ignoring the screaming shareholders, and sprinted to his office. He needed a scapegoat, and he needed one fast. He logged into the master admin panel, something he rarely did, and saw the activity logs. He saw my name. "Parker," he hissed. I could almost hear him saying it from 3 floors down. He grabbed his phone and dialed the FBI. I knew exactly what he was telling them. He was painting a picture of a rogue hacker, a lone wolf who had attacked the company from the inside. I didn't run. I sat there for 45 minutes, watching the chaos from my window. I finished my coffee. I watched the sun move across the floor. Then, finally, the sirens wailed in the distance. Blue lights flashed against the office windows. The SWAT team didn't take the elevator. They took the stairs, boots thundering on concrete. When the double doors to the server room burst open and men with rifles screamed at me to get on the ground, I didn't panic. I raised my hands slowly, looked at them, and smiled. I was exactly where I wanted to be. The interrogation room was cold, smelling of stale coffee and fear. A federal agent sat across from me. He looked tired. A pile of files sat between us, the evidence of the theft. "You're in a lot of trouble, Parker," the agent said. "We traced the IP. We know you wrote the code. Just tell us where the money is." I leaned forward, the handcuffs clinking against the metal table. "I'm not looking for a deal," I said calmly. "I did it. I stole the initial 50,000. I wrote the scripts." The agent blinked, surprised by the immediate confession. "You admit it?" "I admit to the code," I said. "But the billions? I couldn't have moved that kind of volume alone. A system this secure requires 2-factor authentication for anything over $1 million. I'm just an analyst. I don't have those clearance codes." I slid a folder across the table. "Only the CEO has the security key to authorize that level of movement. Check the logs. Every single major transfer, the ones that drained the company, was signed, sealed, and delivered using Edmond Chase's personal digital signature." The agent opened the folder. His eyes widened as he scanned the pages. I had backdated everything perfectly. To the untrained eye, it looked like Edmond and I were partners. I was the mechanic, but Edmond was the mastermind. The trial was a media circus. They called it the billion-dollar betrayal. Edmond's lawyers tried to argue that his key was stolen, that he was a victim of identity theft. But I took the stand and destroyed him. I didn't testify like a criminal. I testified like a frustrated employee. I told the jury about the old system. I told them about the meetings where I begged Edmond to fix the security flaws. Then I played my ace. He didn't just ignore the flaws, I told the jury. He exploited them. I produced the smoking gun, a series of emails I had forged in the server archives. They appeared to be from Edmond to the finance director, authorizing massive payments to Apex Data and Blue Horizon for emergency strategic consulting. "He knew the ship was sinking," I said, looking Edmond dead in the eye. "He was looting the vault before he jumped." The emails were written in Edmond's exact tone, arrogant and demanding. The jury didn't see a budget dispute. They saw a CEO caught red-handed. The narrative shifted. I wasn't the villain. I was the henchman who grew a conscience. Edmond's face turned purple as the verdict was read. He screamed that I was a liar, that I was a ghost, but nobody was listening to him anymore. The judge didn't go easy on us, but the distribution of justice was sweet. Edmond Chase, the man who was supposed to be the captain of the ship, was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. His assets were seized. His reputation was turned to ash. He was ruined. I got 12 years. That might sound like a bad deal to you. But you have to understand something. I didn't have a life before this. I was invisible. Now I'm a legend. I'm writing this from my cell. It's quiet here. I have a library job. I spend my days reading old sci-fi novels and helping other inmates with their legal paperwork. I don't have the money. The government sees the accounts I set up, but I don't care. Yesterday, I saw Edmond in the yard. He looked 10 years older. He was sweeping the basketball court, looking miserable, looking small. He looked up and saw me watching him through the chain-link fence. For a second, our eyes locked. He looked away first. I smiled and went back to my book. I lost my freedom, sure, but I took the king down with me. And in the game of chess, that's not a loss. That's a checkmate.
This story isn't just about corporate greed or a massive heist. It is a powerful reminder that arrogance is a blindfold. Edmond Chase fell not because he wasn't smart, but because he refused to see the value in the people he considered beneath him. He treated Parker like furniture, never realizing that the little people are the ones holding the keys to the kingdom. The lesson: never underestimate the quiet ones. When you treat people with disrespect or ignore their contributions, you aren't just being unkind. You are creating enemies in your own house. True leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about listening to the silence. Respect everyone, from the CEO to the janitor, because the person you overlook today might be the one who decides your fate tomorrow. Thank you so much for following Parker's intense journey with us. It was a high-stakes game of chess, and we hope you felt every heart-pounding moment of the vendetta. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more viral thrillers like this, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Tell us in the comments, do you think Parker's sacrifice was worth it? Was he a genius martyr or just a criminal with a grudge? Type Team Parker if you think he did the right thing by taking the king down with him. See you in the next story.